Hmm. It's pretty good. Oh. Alright, we'll get going here in a minute. Oh. Alright. Let some people load up. We're going to do some Ansible today. And in doing our Ansible, I'm going to keep updating my book. I've been meaning to get this book finished, and I have a few more things to do on the Ansible side of things to get it kind of where I want it. So I'm going to start doing the labs. We'll do labs today, so if anybody wants to do the labs with me, you can. We'll hop on, do some labbage, get some systems work done and out of the way, and I'll add to the book as we go. So if anybody wants to do the labs, we will be in the Ansible labs today. Labs are found here, and they are free. Whoops. Would help if I put my hand in the right spot. There's our labs. They are free. Killer Coda is just a site you can sign up. You can use federated access with Google and I think even maybe Facebook. I don't know. It's just one more thing to have federated nowadays. So we're gonna start at the beginning. We'll do, this is the, if you've never seen a lean pub like Markdown, this is the Markdown that they use, and then this is how we publish the book, right? So I'm going to be going through them, and we'll talk through some of the stuff as we go. You've got all the stuff on the right there that you can read as we do the lab if you want to answer those questions to yourself. And then as I go, I'm going to look into the digging deeper part of it. So I'm going to be adding some documentation pieces that I think people should read and spend a little time with. I have one other presentation on this that I could pull up and compare. Whatever. By the way, I'm on a little bit early because the wife went to dinner with her parents and one of her friends and her friend's dad. They do like a, I don't know, like a thing every few weeks or whatever. So they went to that, and they were going to a place called Macayo's, which I just think is like a mid Mexican place. So they're going. The wife is going to bring me something back though. So like I don't think they're that bad. I'm just not going to go with them. I figured I'd just get my streaming out of the way, and then her and I will watch something later. We've been what have we been doing? We've been finishing up Black Clover. So if you guys have ever watched Black Clover, and then we've been doing what other ones have we been watching? We've been watching a fair amount of like Law and Order SVU, and it's funny because like all the episodes I'm watching, I never got into any of that Law and Order stuff, but all the episodes that I've been watching came out when I was in the Army, and I didn't even own a TV back then. I just lived in the barracks and worked out all the time back then. So that was my late teens, early 20s was just hanging out there. So all right, I'm gonna start. We'll just go through the labs. If anybody wants to do them with me, we can. And if you want to take notes and learn something, you can do that as well. All you have to do for that is just grab a notepad or something, right? We just pull up a notepad and then just, do Notepad++ or something and start taking notes for yourself on maybe ways to reflect on things you're doing. Like if you're here and hanging out, typically my whole goal of doing all this stuff is to get you guys the job. This actually came from a job posting that we were looking at a while back, right? And my goal is to get you guys doing this professionally if that's what you want to do. What did we do last night? We wrote some Ansible that I actually deployed today at work. So, these are the kind of things that we do around here. All right, nobody's watching on YouTube, but we're up on YouTube if anybody cares about that stuff. All right, so let's do this lab. What's this lab asking us to do? It says, welcome to Prolog Ansible. Come down here, and it says, your team has decided they need a tool that they can use to control and operate the many servers you have in your environment. Many servers in this case is 2, but if you can touch 2 servers with a tool, you can touch as many as you can put in an inventory. We'll see that in the next lab. You have been tasked with evaluating Ansible, so we're going to go check out what Ansible can do. So install Ansible and put the version output in a file called root version. All right, so we install Ansible, app-y install Ansible. You can also install Ansible 3. There's we can check that if that's a package in Ubuntu. They behave slightly differently in how they deal with their packages, but for the most part, backwards compatible still. So you can get away with just calling like the copy module as opposed to ansible.builtin.copy module. right? Which is the newer kind of way of doing it, because there's some built-in modules, and then there's also Ansible is very extensible, or what we call modular. We can just plug components in. Extensible means that we can add components too, right? And a lot of people use them interchangeably. There are differences between the two terms, but does it say antibiotics up there? Anyways, my CC doesn't understand engineering terms. Anyways, let's try Ansible 3 real quick, because I don't really use it much. But let's see. Do we have that? Nope, they don't even have that. Ansible 3 in Red Hat is the name of a package. But let's check our version. It should be 2.9.6 still. Yep, Ansible 2.9.6 is what they're still using. That's good. And we throw that down into root version. So there we go. Boom. We've installed Ansible. That's all it takes to get this tool up. And then we got to start playing around with it. By the way, if you say Ansible and then hit tab a few times, here's all the optional commands that you can go read about and spend some time with, right? So there's a lot of other things that we get into in some of the later labs that if you're interested in learning about, you can just go read about the man pages or go spend some time on a Google or DuckDuckGo Safari and go look around at those things on the internet, right? So I say Ansible doc --help. Whoops, you don't have to do it twice. Ansible doc --help, and it'll tell us a little bit about how Ansible doc works. And it says that this is a tool that we can go read about these different things that exist, right? And how do we look at them? We can read what's there, and -s will give a playbook snippet for specified plugin, right? Plugins are kind of everything, and then modules tend to be the things that we run tasks with, right? But anyways, -s will show us about it, so that's good. We can list everything with -l, so we could do something like this. We can see that there are 3,300 or so, almost 3,400. And this right here is the same amount that's always been packaged since we started this lab, because Ansible on 2.9.6 hasn't changed. The newer Ansible has more or less, depending on how many packages you install with it, right? How many module locations you decide to add to it, right? So anyways, let's go look. We can run Ansible doc -l and just list everything if we want, right? And this will dump a lot to our screen here. But if we wanted to go like AWS, we can go look at all the AWS modules that are out there, right? So I hit Q and I say Ansible doc -s for like this AWS code build, right? Like I want to see what things can happen inside of the module for AWS_code build. And if I do that, I can go read that I have to be able to give an AWS access key and a secret key, and those have to have the right permissions, identity and access management, permissions inside of AWS. And then I can come down here and I can do all of these different things and all of these pieces that I might need to through Ansible. So if you wanted to automate some of these things, Ansible does that. By the way, the back end of all of this is Python, so the back end of all that is Boto 3. If you tried to run some of these and you didn't have Boto 3 installed, it would make you go install the dependency Boto 3, right? BOTO3. That's spelled right, but with a space in it. All right, it doesn't matter. So I say down here, Ansible doc -s, and look at setup. Here's information about the setup module, which we'll be running in the next couple labs. Okay, and then Ansible doc -s copy. How does the copy module work? And it gives us a little bit of information about how the setup module works. And then, and then also the copy module. Like what's going on, how do we copy things around? We can read about it right here at the command line. In fact, we can scroll up or down through the page if we want and hit Q to get out and all that good stuff. So, all right, I hit check and it says, look at you, learning Ansible, you solved this challenge. The whole challenge there was to start off and install Ansible. That's the whole first lab. So if we come over here to Ansible install, let's just see Ansible install. What's there? What kind of information do they give us here? You can use pipex. You can upgrade. I've never used pipex. I don't even know what that is. tips available. Python 3, you can install Ansible like that. Upgrade. You can put Ansible in containers. That's actually kind of a common way that people do deployments, and then you just deploy everything from an Ansible container that's been stood up and then tear it down when you're not using it. So digging deeper, right here, we're going to grab this and we're going to say read, we'll start with read the link, or read the install information found here. And then I'll say, oops, to what, how did we install Ansible? What other methods might we use to install Ansible in a system? Why might we want to know these other methods? Right? So what are the other methods that we have, and why might we want to know these? Why might we want to know about setting up an Ansible environment and using source, right, to make sure that we're using proper environments? By the way, if you get into Ansible Automation Platform, we source different environments for different playbooks depending on, again, I was talking about in the newer versions of Ansible, sometimes you have modules there. Like all of your, let's say you're doing like Big 5. So let's say Big 5 Ansible, right? F5 networks, all their big IP is what it's called. Yeah, big IP from F5. I always forget what it's called. They have a whole bunch of different collections now that you can download and use, but you maybe don't want those to be in all of your other playbooks because you're not doing networking stuff. So you might use these modules here, right? And then pull them down and use them inside of nowadays what's called Ansible Automation Platform. And this might only be available, right? And this isn't necessarily, I wouldn't call this like a security thing. I would call this like a separation, I don't want to say even separation of duty. This is just the idea that the environment doesn't even have the capability of doing the wrong things. The environment doesn't even have the capability of messing up. You know, some other playbook can't even call those modules. Does that kind of make sense? So like when we're doing automation and we're giving, so engineers, we build things and then we give it out to our bridge teams and people that are in our network operation centers and stuff like that. Hey Tani, how's it going? How's the, oh, you're at the Seattle Open Source Summit? Nice. OSS, but it's in Seattle this year. Nice. Tani, I mentioned your book a few times the last few days, and I was telling people about, because I'm always telling people to go read the certificate part. And thanks for the resubscription, although I don't know why I did not see it pop up. And I know I have all of those things turned on. We even checked last night. So it's weird. It almost like it like the API took like 30 seconds to catch up or something. But yeah. So what we're doing today is I'm working. I've been saying like for, I think the last publishing was like 2 months ago. So I can publish as many times as I want with LeanPub, and anybody that's ever bought the book before, they get all the updated versions. But what I've been meaning to do is come in here and set up this digging deeper chapter and adding more to each of my different Ansible labs. So I was just going and grabbing some things and explaining some stuff as we kind of go. Gotta log in a new Twitch account. It's DZ from Discord. Nice. 2 follows account. They all add up. I think we have 3,433 followers, which, you know, for good or bad, that's where we're at. But yeah, I do appreciate you following. Follows are free, but I like that you're fake Dempsey now. I do like that. That's funny. All right. So, you know, Ansible has all of these tools, and what I'm trying to do is get people down into the just the things I think that are maybe important to each of the modules. So, all right, so that's the first lab. That was the whole first lab. So we'll go and we'll start the second lab. And then, oh, by the way, before I start that second lab, I'll pull up my little hourglass. because maybe somebody here is like, I want to think about that a little bit. So I'll add right here. I'll put it right over here. 5 minutes. Think about the lab. 5 minutes. So if you were taking notes, there's maybe one person that's doing this with us and wants to take notes. Think through these questions. What tool installed Ansible for us? Now, we saw apt do it. If you're in Red Hat, you're probably watching Yum or DNF do it. Those are the tools that are pretty common. You could build it from source. You could also build it with Python. We just saw pip, and I think there was a tool called pipx that I had never even seen before. You can download it. You can bring it down as a container and actually run your playbooks out of a container that has all of the modules, and that's actually something that you can do if you really want to control whether or not Ansible is in your system. Some people don't want Ansible in their system. They only want Bash or whatever. I don't have a real good... I tell people I don't really have a good use case for why you would do that. Like, Ansible sitting on every system in the environment is no different than Bash sitting everywhere. You still need permissions. You still need to know what you're doing. And it's inert. It's literally just sitting there. I actually... This is one of my favorite little memes that I made for a talk a long while back. We go to our documents and Linux stuff. Linux group presentation. I pull this up sometimes, but since we're talking about Ansible, remember our Ansible moving towards automation, and this is my. So what can Ansible do? Where's he at? This is Ansible right here. What can it do by itself? Not a whole lot. Not when we're talking about orchestration and all these other needs in a system before a system can actually do anything. Ansible by itself can't really do a whole lot. It's you still need to kick it off with something. There needs to be an orchestrator that's, doing things and running Ansible. Ansible by itself is no more dangerous than having a script that reboots everything in your cluster. As long as somebody knows not to ever push that, it's fine. But other than that, you've got this thing triggered at everything in your system, and that can be dangerous, right? Right? I mean, I would tell you guys this is true of all elevated permissions. If you don't know what you're doing, you're a danger. You're basically a menace to yourself and everybody around you, right? I mean, but that's always true. That's not even me being mean to people. That's just true, right? This will be Ansible install information. And then this will save. These will save in real time. So I'm going to leave that up. Oh, I left that up. So what tool install Ansible for us? What version of Ansible are we using? 2.9.6. Why is it important to know? Well, because we need to have, security is going to scan for things and vulnerabilities, and we're going to have CVSS scores and CVE findings about different things. And sometimes we should keep documented where we have all of our software on our systems. And that sounds like a big hassle until you realize that you really should only have so much software on systems. You shouldn't, like, all of your servers do not need web capabilities and Apache 2 and whatever other crap that they might have on them. They don't all need that. Only the web servers need that, right? And it's this idea that we know what's on our servers, and the more you do this, the more you kind of try to control that down, because there's no reason for all these other services to be running. That's our process of like hardening and turning boxes into golden image, right? I said, what version of Python is Ansible using? Well, if I go here, I think we have Ansible on here now. Should be installed in the background. So the version of Python that we're using is 3.8.10. So that's our major version, that's our minor version, and that's our patch version, right? If we're using semantic versioning properly, which they are, right? You say, Scott, did you just make that all up? No, you should know as an engineer, right? You should know semantic versioning as an engineer. So right here, this is what it means. Yeah, this is what all patching versions that you've ever seen in the last 30 years. Well, look, not everybody follows this, but this is very common standard right here. Major, minor, and patch. That's a very common way of numbering. So if you ever wonder where people come up with these numbering systems, this is it right here. Now, very important to note too, when you look at these, this number right here, 10, is not 3.8.1 with a 0 after it. This is 3.8.10. So this is the 10th patch version of this major release 3, minor release 8, and this is the 10th one. And this can go, when you look at kernels, these patch versions go all the way up into the thousands, right? Some of you guys have probably seen those. Oh, there's our timer. So that was us talking about this lab, thinking about it, spending some time, maybe doing some writing. If you or if you just copied these out and threw them into a like a Word doc, right? Or this is a notepad, but something, and then you do a little bit of writing. And I'm a big fan of like writing down your thoughts after labs, because we can just blow through labs quickly. And you guys can watch me do this. By the way, some of you, if you've hung around here, you've probably watched me do this lab. I don't know, I've probably done this lab on stream 30 times if I had to guess. But maybe you don't know a single bit of Ansible still, because like the difference is if you spend time and commit it and write it down. There's a lot of research in the educational world around writing things down and how you remember things and that kind of stuff. So anyway, something to think about for you guys. And then fake Dempsey, hopefully that stuff's useful to you. So we did that. So now let's go look. We're going to do host files and inventories. This is lab 2. Lab 2, link right there. I will link this in the chat for you guys. We will unpin this old message, pin the new lab. Labs are available for a whole hour. I'm just going to leave it up there pinned for 20 minutes. But let's see. It says, welcome to Prolog Ansible. This one says, create an Ansible file called root host with the hosts in your network. And here's the 2 hosts that I give you, right? So I can cat root hosts. Doesn't exist. So vi root hosts. And in here, if I know Ansible likes to use this type of nomenclature, there's 2 ways typically that we can feed information into Ansible. There's an INI format and there's a YAML format. I prefer the INI format, but you can do different ones. Node 01 state : WQ cat root hosts. There we go. There's our file, right? If we look at our solution, it explains that to us a little bit. And then over here, it says, what are the format types for a host file found in Ansible? And then here's an inventory doc. So right here, I go to Ansible inventories. This is what that's going to link to. And right here, we see the answer to this question is we can do an INI format right here, or we can do it in YAML. YAML's also an option. YAML looks like this. Now, here's one example of the same data and a different example of the same data. It's up to you how you want to do this. I've told you guys this before. I'm a very simple guy. I do simple things well, and that has helped me a lot in the engineering world. When I say simple, I mean I do basic tasks and automate them and push them to a lot of stuff. And one of the kind of like hallmarks of my engineering over the last 20 years is that I build things that work. That's one of the things people use me for. Is I build things that hit a bunch of systems, and I test them, and I verify that these kind of things work. But this is where it all starts right here, having a good inventory. I do these. I like this because this works well for me when I'm pulling information and building. I will build these on the fly for environments. Like I will build them from API calls against satellite servers. I will build these out of a tool called XCat. Like I'll do node ls commands and pull different information out. So I will generate these automatically every day in an environment to verify. And one of the things I used to do this when I was the Ansible architect over at Best Western. We had 2 inventories, 2 sources of truth in the company. There was a satellite server, and satellite server is awesome for you to keep track of everything, because then all your licenses are through your satellite server. That's awesome for people that do Red Hat. It's really, because you're licensing all your stuff, right? So that's cool. But then we had this other tool off to the side called Sharewell, which was this just old way of maintaining inventories. And what I did, and I wrote this little thing that wrote out to teams, and all I did every morning was I checked my inventory over there in Satellite, and I came over here and I checked my inventory in Sharewell. And what we found, because I ran this thing every day, and it just told me servers that are in Sharewell that are not in Satellite, servers that are in Satellite that are not in Sharewell, and servers that are not, you know, I don't know, I don't remember what the other one was, but I think I had some numbering and stuff like how many there were. But anyways, where I'm going with this is when people would build stuff in AWS, it would get automatically added to Satellite, but not automatically added to Sharewell. And we would go, and in the morning I would see 3 new servers pop up over in Satellite because they were registered, but they weren't in our main inventory, like our main source of truth for the company. So we, after a few days of doing that and fixing them by hand, we went and fixed the process, so now that never happened anymore. And when I first started doing it, there'd be like 7 or 8 nodes in one or the other, and we would clean them up. But then when we found something systemic to the whole system, we would go and we would fix the systemic problem, and we'd never see it again. And by the time I left there, and one of our guys that's still in our Discord, if you ever want to talk to him about his Pico, he'll tell you, when it was done, our shit was all clean. It was over here, and the process built everything. And if anything ever popped up, it was probably an anomaly where the system broke. And then we would just go fix it, make sure that the system didn't break, or we would find where the system broke, and we would fix whatever that was. And then we never saw the problem again. We would just have a clean report output every morning. And even where I'm at now, I'm working for, well, I have a few different contracts through my company, but one of the big colleges that I work for in the Northwest, they, when I started, we had about 80 nodes that were down in the cluster at any given time, but we've worked that down into the low 30s, almost down in the 20s now, of nodes that are working in the cluster that used to be in a down state all the time, right? So anyways, hold on right here. Fake Dempsey says, so sorry for the late question. You switched from my cell to desktop. You mentioned that you work in an environment where security teams and an obligation to document things. You'd want to document the versions of installed tooling and software. Struggling to formulate this question, so I'm hoping you parse my question. How does that process compare to have scripts that iterate through endpoint servers to determine installed versions of software? So it's what I like to think of it as. So Dempsey, that's a good question. By the way, you will have in most organizations your GRC team, your governance, risk, and compliance. They will probably have a tool that audits you in some way. They will have a tool that has some type of elevated permissions. The big ones that I know of are like Tenable Security. That's a big one that scans. They're kind of pricey too. Other ones are Qualys. Qualys will scan, and it will come into your server with an elevated set of permissions. Not always quite root, but elevated. And it can check things. It can check the version of kernel you have, and it can check the NFS mount points to make sure that all the mount points you're using are at least NFS version 4, and if they're not NFS version 4, that the endpoint that they're connected to has the proper, it's got, we want root squash. You never want root to not be squashed on an NFS mount, because just because I'm root over here doesn't mean I should be root on the storage system of the cluster, right? So there's all these things that happen, right? And they can check all that. So my thoughts on it are like this. Security already knows those things, and they're going to be pinging us. By the way, Qualys and Tenable scanning your stuff, you say, well, what's the value add there? The value add is they keep track of all these CVSS scores and vulnerabilities with all the equipment. So they know that a Red Hat kernel version of like 3.10. Whatever is 3.10 is an older kernel version. CentOS 7 and RHEL 7 were on 3.10. Is it 310? Hold on. Pretty sure it's 310. 3.10, right? And then look, this is how high the patch version has gone on those. But anyways, they will know that there's a vulnerability for that, and then they'll be telling us that kind of stuff. But for me, I like to have the control of my environment to know that things are not moving off of my baseline. Things should not be doing what's called configuration drift. And some people may call the way that I like to manage systems, I guess the technical term would be like anal retentive. But let me just tell you this. We are, I won't say anal, that's funny. Anal retentive. You're a guy who cares too much, right? Like if you've ever seen Parks and Rec, he's like, I've got a condition, I care too much. But we're the engineers. We're the ones responsible for maintaining these things. So we have to know these kind of things. So anyways, my point in that is there are different ways to know it, and your security team should know these things. But I also like to be able to provide it, and then if they ever compare it against their list, they go, damn it, he's right. And I go, well, The reason I'm right is because I want to control these things. I want to know if something in my system has varied to a newer version of the kernel or something like that. And this becomes really, really important in high performance compute clusters, because my kernel version, I have a compiled version of OFED. OFED is your Mellanox drivers for your InfiniBand. My kernel version, I have a compiled OFED driver that runs InfiniBand for that kernel. And then after I do all that, GPFS wants to work over the top of that InfiniBand. So GPFS has to have this thing called the GPFS subsystem layer rebuilt, and that rebuild goes off of the kernel. So you need kernel headers for your kernel version on the system to be able to build that. And all of those things have to stay perfectly aligned. If one thing ever goes askew, your system stops working. Excuse me. So that's one of the reasons that I have gotten so controlled, because it's like if the platform shifts a little bit, nothing works anymore. And it's like if any of you are fans of Rick and Morty, Snuffles needs to be understood, right? If you remember the second episode with the dogs and going into the dreams and Scary Terry and all that stuff, I need to understand my system. I need to grok the system, right? Anyways, all right. Enough of the Rick and Morty references, but so we talked about that. That's the inventory stuff. We've got this. We come over here. We've got our inventory built, and then we can test that we can hit some of the different stuff that's going on in the system. So we can do a ping module and go over and see that the ping module has hit those different nodes. We get some deprecation warnings. That's fine. Not a big deal. And then I can run that ping again and throw it into root check, and that'll pop up. It'll give us the deprecation warnings again, but for the most part, it'll have the right information in it. Now, if you want to see what this is doing underneath the hood, just press up on that and add a bunch of V's, right? 3 V's will give the highest level of verbosity, and it'll go and it'll tell me all the things that it did as it pushed and established the connection, and as it actually called whatever the playbook was and ran it with Ansible or with Python. It'll tell us all of that information, how it ran, what the output was that came back in JSON format, all of that kind of stuff. So there's that. Yeah, and Fake Dempsey, I can tell you that one of the things I was talking about this the other day, and a lot of times people fall into a GRC role early on in their career. Like they're like, I want to go security really bad, and then they do GRC. And I've watched a lot of engineers over the years get burned out there, because low-level GRC work is just audit. You're just like an audit monkey, man. You're just watching these things and throwing it over the wall that, like, hey, there's a problem over here, and hey, there's this, and you got to patch this and this. And it's like, and nobody likes you because you're making more work for them, and all you're doing is looking at audits, and you're not really getting to fix anything. So sometimes, and I'm not trying to scare anybody off, but I'm just saying GRC, I almost feel like that's like how accountants are. You need to have like a special brain that likes to do that kind of stuff. So anyways, yeah, thrown into GRC, and you probably see a lot of people get turned up over there. I'm not saying it's bad. If you're just like, hey, I gotta be security, it's a great place to start. But I'm gonna tell you, you want to probably get out of there. You don't want to stay in there. It's the same thing with people that do like maybe people that do testing or something for like a game studio or something like that. They don't want to live there forever. They want to eventually move off into other things. Same thing with a lot of people will come on in like a help desk or a NOC role because they eventually want to move up in the company. They don't want to stay in the NOC, working the third shift forever. That's NOC. There you go. Network Operations Center, right? All right, so anyways, we pinged this, we checked some things, and then I said, now your team's going to be adding some new servers to the environment. So, yeah, right here, we added some VVV, and then what's the difference between the output? Well, I got a lot more information. Can't get out. Well, like, there's also, like, early on in your career, there's like some bake-in time. You gotta spend time, you gotta learn what the different pieces of the organization are doing. You gotta learn how to play the game. You gotta learn their management. Are they using ITIL? Are they using agile frameworks? Are they using this new hotness, which is the safe agile frameworks? And like everybody's jumping on that, and it's like, If we did shit wrong in waterfall and then we did it wrong in agile, what makes you think safe agile is going to be any better? We're just changing methodologies every 5 years. We're just doing what's called chasing the rabbit, right? A little dog trying to chase a rabbit, and then the other rabbit runs off. And rabbits always run in circles. If you guys have never seen that, rabbits always run in like a half moon, like circular pattern. They will always come back to where they started, and they tire dogs out that don't know how to chase them, don't know how to stay on the rabbit. It's a engineering concept, or it's a business concept, right? I say, what are the output types available for Ansible inventory? So we're going to look at this. Your team's going to be adding some new servers to the environment that haven't been built yet. Update your inventory file to add those things in. So I'm going to clear this screen. I'm going to VI my root hosts, and I'm going to add Shift-G-O these 2 new environments, 3 new environments. These environments do not exist yet. Or are these nodes? Whoops. Control-Shift. They like you to use Control-Shift-V. What? I don't know what's going on with my paste is just not. Control-Shift-V should paste that in. Okay. So what's our inventory look like now? We're still using an INI format. We still have our original servers host group up here. But now we got a host group called test environment that has a control test and a node 01. Those don't exist, by the way. Prod environment called control prod and node 01 prod. That one doesn't exist either. And then we have servers and test environment. So we've got our original nodes, and then we've got these new ones that are coming. And then we've got this thing called non-prod, and the children of this are that servers host group and the test environment host group. So if I want to hit both of those host groups, I can use non-prod. So it's a hierarchy here, right? And there's its children. By the way, I have some variables that have been added to these nodes. If I don't use the variables, it doesn't matter, right? They're just variables sitting there. Escape : WQ, or whatever way you want to choose to leave that. I say, now that you've updated your inventory for the new systems, view the inventory with Ansible inventory to see the different host groups. So we're going to do a list of that, and then I'm going to ask over here, what are the output types available for Ansible inventory? So I just did Ansible inventory with a -- list, and what's the output version of that? If you guys look at that, does anybody know what that output is right there? It's a very common format for output, right? So I'll let you think about that, and then I come down here and I'm going to look at this graph output, and the graph output, that's just a hierarchy. That's not really programmatically useful, because it would be a lot to strip that all out and stuff. So no, that's okay. And then what about this? What if we want to see YAML output? That's YAML. That's definitely YAML. Remember I said we could feed it in YAML or INI? Well, if we feed it in an INI format, but we needed it in YAML for some reason, we could have that. So there you go. There's the hierarchy of how non-prod has these children of servers and test environment, and then prod has these hosts here, and there's all our pieces right there. Good. So, that first one, by the way, if anybody wanted to take a guess, you guys have gotten it before, so I'm not trying to be sneaky. Yeah, Fake Dempsey, do you know what that is? Do you know what my little subtitle generator is? It's just PowerPoint. I just have a PowerPoint in presentation mode behind the screen here. That's all it is. PowerPoint. I'd say it's like 95% accurate. Maybe like 97%. It's pretty good. It doesn't get a lot of stuff, but it does other. Yeah, I started doing it a few months ago. I was like, this looks all right, so I'm gonna start doing this. I think it gives people something to look at while I'm talking, even though sometimes I'll look down and, like, earlier it said something like infection rate, and I'm like, what the hell? I didn't say infection rate. I don't know what I was talking about, but it definitely had no idea what I was talking about. Fun fact about this is not happening on my local machine. That CC though, the closed cap. That's fine. What's one more device listening to me at this point, right? Oh, this thing says reconnecting. Did I just lose all my network? Did we lose the stream? Let's see. It says, did you guys lose me? I don't know. This is weird. I think you guys are still around, but like all my stuff is busted. That's weird. Okay, okay. It was just F for like a second or something. Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, what the heck? Um, can I refresh this over here without breaking YouTube? Maybe. Open. Next stream. Alright. Well, it looks like I'm here. Alright. So anyways, we're here, we're doing this, and I said, what output of Ansible do you think will be the most useful for you in a larger deployment? So which one would you probably use? Or which one would be useful for you, like if you had a use case to like build or to use Ansible for anything? Which of these different inventories might you want to see or to feed out to your dev teams or whatever, depending on where you find yourself? Most of us doing Ansible like this down at the system level are probably like systems engineers, platform engineers, maybe some SREs and DevOps type people are doing this kind of stuff. But think about that and where would you do it? And then when that's all done, this thing should. This is super weird how long some of this stuff's taken. I don't know. I don't see my bitrate going down. Yeah, super weird, man. Yeah, it says my I see audio. But that doesn't mean it's getting out to you guys. It just means that I'm seeing it. This is no good, guys. This is not good. Let me refresh this stuff. Yeah, Star Fox, give it a refresh maybe. I don't know. I see audio going out, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting anywhere, right? Especially if all this stuff is busted. Look at you learning Ansible. You solved this challenge. You built an inventory file, used it to connect to servers. Then you added an additional servers for a new environment. Let me make sure. I gotta check something over here. Hold on, guys. Sorry. Okay, it didn't resend all that. Okay, good. Good. No audio. Guys, I mean, my mic's working. I see it sending. Let me see here. Mute it and bring it back, maybe? I don't know. Anything? Audio is always like my worst thing. But, yeah, I don't know. Also, you might notice, because sometimes people notice that I don't play my sound directly through my sound in Streamlabs desktop. I don't know what it is. Every couple of hours when I do that, the system just crashes. I don't know if there's a memory leak in Streamlabs or what, but when I play music directly through, like off the Windows Media Player directly through to you guys, it always crashes after a couple hours. I don't know. I never really dug in what's going on with that. I just play the music for me, and then I guess you guys just hear it through my speaker, which is better. Okay, I'm glad you guys can hear me. All right, so this is stuff to think about here, and then our digging deeper, which will go into some of these different pieces, is you've got your inventory file, right, and if we just go here, right, so we go to inventory, assigning variables. So read this section on adding variables here, right? Can you add variables to your playbook for control plane to have a variable called env, which is equal to prod, and node 01 has a variable called env, which is equal to depth. All right, so can you add a variable to your playbook for each of those different hosts by looking at this and figuring out how you would add those variables. And I think that probably most people could come right here and say, okay, I could define variables in INI format like this. I can have Atlanta, and then I could have variables underneath it, or I could have in YAML like this, or if I come down here, the way that I was doing it, this also is the same way. It's giving us these specific variables that would be part of the Southeast, and then the Southeast has the children of Atlanta and Raleigh. So host 1, host 2, host 2, and host 3. So host 1, host 2, and host 3 have these variables set for them in case they need to do some of this different, if you're doing a deployment or something and you need to set a very specific database connect string, or you needed to, by the way, you can give variables that are not in plain text. There's secure variables that we can use in Ansible. They wouldn't be added in an inventory like this. We would feed them in through a vault or something like that, right? But I asked, can you add these variables if you needed to for those two different things? And technically, if you were reading the lab or doing the lab still, cat root hosts, I have it right here, how you would do that. So for your control plane node, you would add, let's just do it real quick. To answer that question on the digging deeper right there, you could come here. This is a way to do it, guys. You could say app equals prod. Oh, sorry, env equals prod, right? And then node 01 could be env equals dev. And then if you wanted to see those, like if you needed to print those out somehow, you could do it like this. You could just vi, some, and we do this later, but some playbook .yaml, right? Doesn't matter. And we grab I always steal from myself, right? So I just go grab this little top to my playbook here. Why is this not? This is so weird to me. My typically, if you reach over something like this inside of Putty, it will copy it for you. Then you come over here, Control Shift V, and it should drop. Okay, yeah, there we go. And then I come in here, and I should just be able to go right here for tasks. Yeah, I can indent it. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter as long as your hierarchy stays the same. But right here, I'm just going to go watch like this. I'm going to say name debug our env variable, right? And then here I'll say debug is my module, and the var is going to be env, right? And then now if I cat root host, I have it right there. So I can say Ansible playbook -i root hosts. That's the inventory I want to use, right? And then I want to play the playbook, some playbook.yaml. And I have to give, I did this really weird thing in here. Let me cat this file real quick. I did this really weird thing that I do where I don't explicitly give servers right here. I only gave this variable. So now when I go to run my playbook, I have to do this. And I do this to short circuit it. And this is something you don't really need to worry about now, but I don't want anybody to ever mess up with my stuff. Like I've had this happen. We're gonna give the extra var survey hosts, and that's gonna be equal to servers, right? So now this playbook should just debug that environment variable on those two servers, and we should see that those servers know. Oh, I just fixed it, but I didn't look at it again. They should know their environment variable. One's prod and one's dev, just like we set up. Right? So there's our control plane, has environment prod, and then here's our node 01, and he has debugged as that. Now you might look at that and go, well, what's that output? That's JSON output, right? Or JSON, whatever you want to call it. So look at you building Ansible, doing all this stuff. And then if you were to go and look at these, yeah, you were able to dig deeper, read that section, and add that part to your playbook, right? So that was something that I wanted to add for the lab. All right. So I talked through all these, so I don't think you need the 5-minute thing like I was doing with the other ones. Let's do our lab on ad hoc commands. So if anybody wants to do this lab with me, I will pin it here. All right, you guys are welcome to do the labs with me. I will leave it pinned up there. Killer Coda labs are free. And we are going through, this is actually a book that I have up on LeanPub. But you guys are seeing the exact same things that I do, or the pieces of what show up in the book. So here's the lab link. And then I say in here, so we'll start with verify your host file and test ad hoc commands to your server. So we'll verify server uptime, verify the OS type of the server, and then verify the date and the time that exists within the server. Now there's some deliverables. You need to make me a root version, so I know the version of the Ansible facts of the distribution of each server, and then a root date with Ansible facts for the current date of each server. Okay. So cat out root hosts, control plane in node 01, and then we'll go check the uptime of all the servers. Just run a little ad hoc command. Now an ad hoc command is not the way that we run big playbooks and big configurations and all these things we're going to get to. This is the simplest piece. This is the simplest way that I can just go touch a bunch of servers with a simple command played out of a module inside of a playbook. Well, not even in a playbook yet. We're not even there. We're in ad hoc mode. And we're just ordering one little thing. And in this case, we're ordering just the shell module to just go do an uptime on those servers. Right? Just want to do uptime. And then you may go, that doesn't really do that much for me. What if I said, or what if you said to me, hey Scott, can you guarantee that both of these nodes that you have the same route out to the internet? And I go, well, I think I can. Right? I think I can do that. What if I go like this? They have the same default route for traffic that needs to get out to the internet. Oh, they don't have the same default route. One goes 172.30.2.1 and one goes 172.30.1.1, right? So they actually send their traffic out separately. So that's good. I didn't know that. I didn't know that about the lab environment. But now I do know, because I just checked it on both of those nodes. They're not the same. So this is the thing, like if you have quick checks, and I actually do a check very similar to this in some of our environment, where if a node goes down and it comes up configured with the wrong default route, I actually have that fixed. I use a little playbook that kind of looks like this, except it's more of a playbook. This is ad hoc. We're just doing like one-off commands and stuff. But sometimes quick and dirty, I'll just check things like that. Just check things against a set of nodes that I have. And again, you guys are seeing that I'm just using servers, which is just some host group inside of some inventory file. But I could this could be any number of servers once you understand how the basic inventories work, right? So anyways, what are Ansible facts? Ansible facts are gathered by a tool called Factor, and we can go and check all of these facts that are there by doing a module setup. Whoops, we'll just do it right here. We'll do the M setup, so module is setup, and look at all this information it dumps out to the screen. And I've shown this before. It's about 16 pages per server. It's this tremendous amount of information. But what does Ansible know, or what does the server know about itself when Ansible gathers this information, right? And these variables are stamped directly to the server. So if we get up here, we'll see that right here. Probably not too much farther because it's alphabetical. It's alphabetical here. We should be able to see. We don't even have enough space to see that it's the second node. Hold on. Where's he at? No? Date, time. Yeah, we can't even go back. We're still only looking at the second one right here. So that's too much information, right, guys? Anytime you get that information like that, that's too much to the screen. So what we need to do instead is go look for a very specific thing. And on your screen, you can see this a little bigger. On my screen, I have to kind of scroll around. But we're going to do that same setup module, but now we're going to pass some arguments to the module. So we're going to filter just for the Ansible distribution. Just give me the distribution information about the system. And I go, well, the Ansible distribution is Ubuntu. This is an Ubuntu style system. Okay. And then I can go look at, I'll throw that into root version so I have that saved. And then I can say, well, what's all the date time information? What's everything that's contained under the date time variable of this server? Look at all this information I can find out. Ansible facts, Ansible underscore date underscore time. Here's the date, the day, the epoch time. Does anybody know what the epoch time is? I'm sure some of you do. The hour. Here's some ISO 8601 type information. This is very common type of format for passing information. Actually, I think this is one of the most common formats, the ISO 8601 format. It's the most common format you'll run into when you're doing API calls, right? This one right here. This is one that probably some of you have had to parse out and choke down in different stuff that you've built over time, right? And there's ways to read this stuff, there's libraries and stuff that'll make this stuff all easier, but this is very common, right, to know how to do. And then here's all this little individual information. What if you want to check all your servers were on the same time zone? Could you do that, right? Could you debug that variable across a bunch of nodes and see that all your servers were on the same time zone? You probably could. Probably do something like we just had in the last lab, and then you could go and debug just that variable, and the full path to it would be Ansible underscore date underscore time dot tz, right? Because it's JSON format. If you guys want to see it, it would look like this. vi, let's just say time check dot yaml, right? And go in here. We'll go back here. Nothing like stealing from myself, right? Boom. All right. Then my tasks are going to be just a debug. So name, this is just a debug of time zone, right? That's an arbitrary thing for us. Debug, and then again, the variable that we want is Ansible date time dot tz. And it's going to debug us for both of those. Ansible playbook -i root hosts time check. Extra vars for me is survey hosts, and my survey hosts equal servers. So that'll hit just those servers that I want to hit, right? And it'll tell me that the time zone for both is UTC. And then you might say, well, you know what, though, Scott, that's not super optimal right there for us to do like 1,000 servers. And I go, you're right. That's where Jinja templates come in later. I don't want to just grab all this, guys. This would look like shit if I took all this and dropped in an email. What would be better is I can use Jinja templates to take this logic, and if I don't see UTC, let me know. This is, by the way, when I was talking earlier about how I love to push stuff out to like Teams or Slack or Discord and use webhooks to get my information out. I like to post, like if I were going to do this check, I would only post the names of servers that were not on UTC. Like I would do a check and I would make sure that like 999 of my servers were on this, and like 12 of them are over on something else. And what I would do then is I would pump that out to my Teams channel or Discord or Slack or whatever we're using, because that stuff's super easy, right? Just push to a webhook. There's tools for that. There's modules for that. And I would only want to see the ones that aren't supposed to be there. And then what would happen is it would always be clean. And one day, maybe somebody builds 4 machines and they come up with the wrong time zone, and I immediately catch it. Because I'm always telling you guys, this is what you have. If you have a cluster if you have a cluster at home, you just have like 10 machines at home. This is what you have to monitor those machines. If you have 10,000 machines in a high performance compute cluster somewhere, this is what you have right here to monitor it. Unless you go build a tooling, this is what you have to monitor your shit right here. So this is why you guys see me build so much monitoring around stuff. In fact, we had a P1 outage. So P1 is the highest level of outage at one of my customers today. It wasn't related to me. It was something that happened in the system. And this Grafana tooling that we built out, all of this monitoring that we're always building, we were using it in real time on the call to determine the exact scope of when our monitoring stopped getting we were using a tool called Slurm, and when Slurm stopped working until it started working again, we saw that failover occurred, but failover didn't occur properly. So failover, and then we went back and we said, wait a minute, we have 30 days of data. Can we see when this has historically happened before? And it had happened for 6 hours, 2 weeks ago, but nobody noticed because the failover occurred correctly. So now we have this problem where in our root cause analysis, by the way, there's two types of things you're trying to do on like a call with like a P1, which is the highest type of outage for us in this environment. You're trying to get the system back running. That's your incident fix. And then you're trying to do this thing after, which is called like problem fix in an ITIL sense. And that is the root cause analysis and how do we keep the train from going back off the tracks. The first thing is we got to get it back on the tracks. We got to get it moving. And then the second part is, well, what happened? Why did it go off? Right? So that kind of stuff. I've seen that format before in error log. Nice to see what. Yeah. So we have all this. Throw this information in here, so we'll keep going. And I say, what are Ansible facts? Ansible facts come from Factor, and it will give you a bunch of information about the server. And I said, what is the name of the host group we're calling in our ad hoc command? So when I'm doing my ad hoc command right here, which is just simply something like this, how is that, what is the host group that I'm using? So if I cat root hosts, here is the inventory file, and here is the host group right here. You get multiple host groups in the inventory file. In fact, at work I generate them daily, and then they look like that. Let's do an experiment real quick here. Let's go to. We've been on streaming chill today. Let's go to streaming dark. Yeah, we're on chill. Let's change it to fast. Let's go to fast stuff. All right. Let's see if that pumps people up a little more. All right. Anyway, so what kind of information do you think is valuable from the setup command? Which of these might you use in the enterprise and why? So that setup command that we did earlier, right? Setup with no argument. It's going to dump so much information to your screen. And then I want you to look at that information and think about, what might I use here? What would be important for me inside of my system? What might I want to know about? Is the Python version important? Because without the right Python version, certain things won't work in my environment. Do I have a locked-in Python version for maybe, maybe we're in an all Python shop. I don't know. There's a big one up here. We can see Ansible proc command line, so that's how we see how the system booted. So one of these like this, right? Equals Ansible proc. What is that? Let's say Ansible proc. Let's see if that. Whoops. It's a. It doesn't need that in there. Whoops. What's going on here? Oh, there's no space. That was weird. No, that space wasn't there. But now, here's our Ansible proc command line, and it gives me information about how the system booted, right? And you might look at that and go, well, what's that important for? If you guys have heard me talk about how I build things in clusters for like high performance compute nodes, they all need to be exactly the same, guys. I mean, if you've ever seen like everything coming off the line and it's getting the same exact stamp over and over again and everything looks exactly the same, that's what I want my servers to be built like. There's so many problems if you have aberrant things going on in your environment. You set yourself up for all kinds of problems, but I want to know that all my machines have the same exact kernel on them. That's one of those simple things. Another one that's very simple besides this is, do they have all the same mount points? Do they have all the same external route? Boxes, servers that are built, I used to call them servers or boxes sometimes, they are always going to have the same configuration if they are stamped from the exact same template. And then if something ever starts to deviate from what we call our baseline, then we figure that out, right? We can figure out, what part of the process is breaking that, or what part of the process is not working. Oh, well, in this build, and by the way, when I build things, we call APIs and get information. Maybe the API was down. You got to think about your dependencies as you build some of this. I want to be able to build servers every day, but what if somebody has, you know, an outage plan for something? I need to know these kind of things, right? So this is all important stuff. Okay, so why is it so important to know about the ISO 8601 standard when using Ansible? Well, because that's a very common time format, right? That's a very common format that you're going to see in anything that ever calls anything across the World Wide Web. You're going to see this format almost exclusively. Now, I don't like this format for file systems. So when I stamp files, I always use ISO 8601 basic short, because that is friendly to a file system right there. And it still has the uniqueness for me of being the year, the month, and the day, and then the time in hour, minute, second, but in a way that doesn't have this. And if you say, Scott, please explain to me why that's not nice. Well, let's look at it real quick. Touch some file dot that. Now, I'm going to try to cat that file. That's a monstrosity right there to try to figure out and call later, right? So I take that stuff out. I don't play with special characters in file systems. So that's why if you're ever wondering, like, hey, why is Scott always emphasizing this in like later playbooks? Because this will play nice with your file system. You won't have to add these. Right? And I hit tab so it auto-completed for me. But your system, your program that wants to come and programmatically grab some log file that you have won't be able to do that tab complete. It'll have to be something parsed out, and it's just a nightmare, right? It's just one more thing to not. Again, I mean, I wasn't in any of the rooms deciding this stuff, but I wouldn't have allowed special characters like that because they have to be escaped. So there's a few file system characters that are like that, but colons are one that are most on my mind about that. All right, so ad hoc commands. So then I come up here and let's say Ansible ad hoc commands. So here's our introduction to ad hoc commands. And our digging deeper here will be read about ad hoc commands. Oops. Here. And then let's go, whoops. So over here, Ansible. So here's how an ad hoc command is worked, right? How do you set the number of forks in an ad hoc? Right? And if any of you are reading right there, you set the number of forks with the -F. What is the default? Why might you care? Well, in my lab, when I hit a set of servers at work, especially for patching or something during our patch windows, I have 1,260 nodes to hit. If I am using the default of 5 simultaneous processes, and actually I think it's 25 in the Red Hat version, the one that we have installed, I think it's 25. That's going to take forever. So it's going to do 25 at a time, and then by the way, Ansible will wait until all 25 are done until it comes back. So you say, well, what does that mean? Well, if a SSH connection times out or something and hangs, 25, you can have a nickel holding up a dime, if you guys, or a nickel holding up $1. If you guys have ever heard that expression, that's the expression, nickel holding up $1. And it's like, for this one server, it's holding up all the rest of the servers in the line. And you can have timeouts and stuff, but SSH connections that are connected aren't going to time out because they're actually doing something. It can cause these problems, and sometimes you have to go in and kill them and stuff. But anyways, I set my fork count to 100 on my server, and that's acceptable for me. In some bigger clusters that I have, like the NOAA clusters, I'll set my forking to 300. But but my management node there has 256 cores, and take that back. That system has 512 cores and 2 terabytes of RAM. So that's a pretty beefy control box to be able to handle all that. You go real high on your fork count, you'll start to see Ansible start to churn through, because Ansible is literally holding every variable it knows about in memory. And Ansible is this is one of the few criticisms that I think are really valid, is Ansible is a memory hog, a memory and process hog. It will lock up lesser systems and crash them. And I've seen that happen too. All right, what other commands? Let's see. There's our built-in. So look, this is starting to be like a newer versions. All right, we don't need to do anything else. But I might ask, what is check mode? How might you use it? All right. So digging deeper for this one is more about reading these. All of my digging deepers are about going and reading the documentation for the most part. All right. So then the next lab is ad hoc commands continued. And ad hoc, again, some of you, if you've used any Ansible, you're like, why the hell are we doing ad hoc mode? Well, because I like people to see the individual pieces before we go start trying to build playbooks. Playbooks are, some people just pick up a playbook and start running with it, sure. But if you've never built any one of these before and never seen one, I think it's valuable to see the individual pieces before you move off into these other things. So, all right, let's go back. We'll go to the next lab. So we'll go copy and line in file. So this one is, I'm unpinning the old lab. We'll pin the new lab here. Anybody wants to do it with me, there it is in Killer Coda. And it'll be sitting there. All right, so welcome to Prolog Ansible. Verify your host's file. So I don't make you build that file. And then verify your root config file.config. So this config file has some arbitrary key value pairs in it. Those are made up. They don't represent any real thing, but they are there to show you some of these different pieces. And here's the questions that I want you to think about as you're doing this lab. After you run the first ad hoc command of the file, run it again and see how it behaves differently. Why? Is there a difference in why? So we'll do that here in a second. After you run the copy module, how does it behave differently? So same type of idea. Can you verify the MD5 and SHA-1 sums of the file? Okay, there's the commands if you need them. After you push the file, what happens if you push it again? Does it change if you've been changing with line in file? And then what command might you use to test for the same kernel versions on all servers? So we actually did that last one, but let's go look at this. So we cat our root host, we see that. We cat that file, we've seen that. And then now I say, let's do this simple little command where we're gonna make sure that we have a directory on both servers called opt deployment, right? So we ran it, and it tells us that it changed the first time on the system. It had to change. Why did it have to change? Well, because that didn't exist. So it's changed. It gave us the default mode. You didn't see us put any of those values in here. We only gave it a path as an argument and a state to be a directory. So I said over there, let's run it again and see what happens the second time. You notice it says control plane changed, and it gave us the file. Now let's run it again and see what happens. Does it run again, or does it say, it's already there, bro? This is that idea of idempotency that we talk about, where now I can run this over and over again. It doesn't have to change. It doesn't keep making opt deployment directories. It sees that it's already there with the right permissions, and it's good. But what if I did this? What if I said mode is equal to, and we're going to go, mode will be 0750. So normal users can't traverse that directory anymore. And now it'll say, I had to change it, buddy. But if I do it again, I didn't have to change it. And then if I take that off, I still shouldn't have to change it, because it's just going to be, but it's going to tell me that it's in 0750. So then I could do something like this. I could say, well, what if instead of all that, I just did, whoops, what if I just did the module is shell, and the argument is ls-l on opt deployment, right? So we change to the shell module and just say, I want to see it as a Linux guy. And ls-l, oh, ls-ld noob, right? And I see it is indeed 750 now. So that's what we expect. Guys, earlier when we started this, I mentioned that I was going to hear the wife come home and I was going to have to go. So I apologize, guys. The wife is home. My stream has to get cut short. I'm going to keep updating the book. The book is the only thing around here. Everything else around here is free, but the book's the only thing I charge for because it's up on LeanPub. If you guys want to join the Discord, Discord's free. Hanging out with people, doing all this stuff, playing with labs, it's all free. The book is the only one that costs anything. So don't worry about buying that unless that's something that interests you and you want to spend more time with this stuff. I'm not trying to sell you guys anything. It's just how LeanPub works. All right, got to get out of here. Let's go find somebody to raid. We'll go raid somebody. But I definitely appreciate you guys coming by. And it was a kind of shorter, smaller stream tonight. But we'll go see if anybody's doing anything. We'll go hit Midnight Simon. He's doing leak code stuff. So I will see you guys that want to be around probably tomorrow night. We're raiding over.